for a living, baby. How you doing?
What made you want to get out of the ministry situation?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that I had a desire to get out, but
Right.
Five kids. Our oldest three are now in college.
Oh, wow.
We've got one that'll graduate next year, and as soon as she graduates, she'll probably go to graduate school. But then we'll have a freshman entering in college. So between graduate school and undergrad, we'll have four in college at the same time. And then once we start getting some of those out, we've got an eighth grader that'll be, coming right through. So the next, I don't know, 10 years probably will be getting kids through college.
Okay.
And when we were in Portugal, our oldest three said, "Look, Dad, we want to study in the States. We don't want to study in Europe."
Okay.
At that point, we started backing the bus up because I didn't want to send three teenage girls back to America and say, if you have a problem, if something comes up and you really need mom or dad, even though you'll be with grandparents, we'll be there in 24 hours. Like,
right.
I wasn't comfortable dividing our family and saying, you guys go here, we'll stay here. So we backed the bus up. We looked at the future kind of, hey, taking care of aging parents. And we're right in that window of college kids, us, aging parents. When we get the kids out of college, we'll definitely be stepping into that role of more caretakers in the latter years of our parents. So just, basic financial math, I said, I need to be able to financially help support my kids and my parents in this stage. And not for nothing, but pastor's salary isn't going to allow me or wouldn't allow me to do that.
For sure. Yeah, that's tough. And I mean, shoot, dude, 4. Yeah, you're going to rock for sure 3 in college for what? Yeah, you said the next 10 years.
Several years. Yeah.
And where are they going? Because what I met in Portugal, I didn't meet them all. I met.
Yeah, you probably, maybe at least 4.
Yeah.
So we've got one that's a junior at Sanford.
Okay.
She's studying vocal performance. We've got one who is at a community college here in town. She wants to get into nursing. We've got one who is right now at Marion Military Institute, but in June we'll be going to West Point, where I graduated from.
Okay.
And then the other 2 are junior and an 8th grader. So no telling where they'll go or what they'll do, but
damn, man, that's literally there's not one in the same little group as the other at all, huh?
I'll tell you, we have said this ever since we had all 5 of them, like ever since our youngest was born. There is not one that none of them are alike. Every single kid that we have are they're completely different in every way imaginable. We've got one who aspires to music be a part of her. She's looking at maybe music therapy or therapy using music for babies in the NICU, and it's an emerging technology, I think. But one who is going to be involved in music, one who wants to serve in the medical community, one who wants to serve in the military, one who is thinking about, theater or art or, something along those lines. And then our son, I don't know, he might be a YouTuber one day, like just completely, one of those.
That would round out the bunch perfectly.
Right, exactly. So, and we'll see. I had somebody ask me yesterday, do you anticipate like any of your kids joining you in the business? And my answer was, there's been some discussions. Several of them have said, hey, Dad, I want to know more about what you do and, maybe one day help you, that kind of thing. So it could come full circle and we could have an entire family shop that they all carry on different roles. It's exciting. But we got a lot of grind before we get there.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And you grew up in Alabama? Is that why you're back there now? Is that the kind of home base reasoning? It's close
Yeah.
to your folks
Yeah.
as well,
So,
I'm
yeah.
assuming.
Right. So my wife and I both born and raised here. Well, my wife's born in Missouri, but raised here in Birmingham area. And so all of our parents are within about 30, 45 minutes.
Oh, sweet.
So we can touch them pretty quickly as we need to. And that's what it made sense for us to come back. Had a few other opportunities that were a little bit further out, but it just made sense to be back here in Birmingham. And it's home for us. It's not home for the kids, but it's home for us. And that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, because how long were you in Portugal?
10 years.
10 years. That so how had the transition for the kids then coming back? Because that's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a
We took
unique
them away
thing.
from home. We took them away from home. And we have conversations. I mean, in their mind, now it's a little bit more, yeah, I'm American, but for a very long time, it was their mindset. They would tell you, like, I'm Portuguese.
Yeah.
And so we took them, when we moved back to the States, we took them away from home, even though we came back home, even though they were all born here in America and all, are American. Their mindset and their cultural identity was much more Portuguese, and I think they'll continue to
So they're
carry
always
that
late.
for a long time. Say again.
So they're always late to everything.
we try to make sure that doesn't happen, but yeah,
I had to get that one in there.
no, absolutely. They've got the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
and being here in America, but having that cultural perspective from Portugal, and not as much of the different cultures that you've seen and you're experiencing, which is a really cool thing. But they do appreciate folks that are here in America and don't look like them or aren't from America. And the first year when we came back, our middle three, when they got put in school, they got put in the homeroom class with all the exchange students or foreign students. Yeah. And
Whoa.
so, like,
Okay.
initially it was, hey, this is cool. Over time, it got to be more of, they just kind of kicked us to the side and didn't know what to do with us because that kind of thing. But initially, they had a lot of their friend group was and still is, folks from different cultures, and I'm happy about that. I enjoy the fact that they appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's super interesting to me. I didn't even really realize that, like being born there, bouncing over, bouncing back, because I've always kind of in my mind, if and when, probably bigger if, I do have kids, like I've always thought I would love them to grow up in Europe, but then possibly have the opportunity, if they're into sports, I like the American sports system that we got going, and to come back and kind of have that duality that they're having. And so this is honestly like probably the first person I've ever talked to that like is, I guess you're not the one living it, but you're living it through them. And so like you can speak for it pretty well. And so that's super interesting.
There's a common kind of theme. There are books that have been written about this, but the idea is they're a third culture kid. So there are important questions, not to get on a hobby horse, but when you talk to folks, especially kids or teenagers or young adults even that grew up in different places, we normally would say, like, I would ask you, hey, so Joey, where are you from?
Yeah, and I'd say Issaquah or Seattle, Washington.
Right. If you ask my kids, that's a question that brings anxiety with it, because you don't know how to answer it. Well, I was born in America. I lived for 10 years in Portugal. I'm in America now. I don't know how to answer that question. So, and I'm not being politically correct, right?
Yeah.
But the best question to ask is, maybe something about a passport country, or where do you call home? That kind of thing that they can speak more towards their real experience. And because it's like I said, it brings anxiety for them to think about, I don't know how to answer that question. And so they have a third culture where they don't belong. They don't belong in where we served in Portugal, because they weren't born Portuguese, right? So they always were looked at as, funny story, in our first house we lived in, they were known as the British girls. And nobody knew we were American unless we told them. They knew that we spoke English. If we spoke English, we had to be from England.
Right.
Never in a million years would they thought they're American.
The British.
I had people come up to me. I was going to pick my son up one time, and I was parked on the street, steep hill, a big bus is trying to get by, and this guy comes up to me, starts talking to me, and I have no clue what he's saying.
So this is like right when you moved there?
No. This is probably 8 or 9 years in.
Okay.
And I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying. And so I spoke to him in English, and he spoke back to me in broken English. And he said, "You're not Russian?" And I said, no, I'm not Russian. He knew I wasn't Portuguese. He looked at me enough, because my descent is Polish.
Yeah.
He looked at me enough to say, well, this dude is like certainly Eastern European. And he was speaking to me in Russian, and I had no idea what he was saying. He said, "You're not Russian?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "I'm American." And like totally confused him completely. But the kids, the girls, my son too, but the girls, they never belonged solely. They were not accepted as Portuguese. When they come back to America, or when we would come back and visit, they weren't American because they lived and functioned as Portuguese kids. And so there's this separate culture that is created between those two, and there are very specific things that happen with third culture kids, challenges, but also things that they're good at. And our son, he was 16 months old when we arrived in Portugal, and he was just first starting to talk. We started learning and speaking Portuguese around a lot of Portuguese folks, and it just threw him for a loop. It just scrambled his brain.
Yeah.
And so he stopped, he shut down, didn't speak very much after that, 16 months old, all the way up to maybe 2 years old. When he did start to speak again, he made up his own language.
Uh-huh.
And he would say things that made sense to him, didn't make sense to anybody else. And it wasn't Portuguese, and it wasn't English. And so it was.
Were you a little worried at that point, or is that, like you said, it was kind of a common thing?
He understood Portuguese, but it was just his way of working out that in his own mind. It didn't cause us any concern, but there were times when, we would have to apologize or tell people, somebody would ask him a question, and he would say, "Wagak," and the other person, like, what do I do with that? Because they know that's not English, not Portuguese. What do I do with that? And so we'd have to, help him. And then he has 4 older sisters. So they always translated or spoke for him. And there's just a lot that goes into it. But that's a common, we had another lady, she's German, living in Portugal. And she said, that's his third culture coming out of him. And he's inventing his own language. Just the adaptation that goes along with, as a young kid being put in that position. It's really, I know there's a lot of talk about heroes and this and that, but my wife will say all the time, like, our 5 kids, they're her heroes because of what they went through and the challenges and how they just kind of rolled with the punches.
Man, yeah, I can't. Like I said, in my mind of like doing kind of what I've always felt like, because I'm not sure when or if I'll come back to the States right now. With things are going well for me out here.
Yeah.
And I mean, we might get into it. Things are a little rocky back home. And so I might just ride the wave out here for a while. But in my mind, it's always I guess it wouldn't have to be as difficult of a thing, a third culture, because there wouldn't be that initial like leaving. And even with that anxiety, I get the anxiety and like the having to say the same story over and over. And because it's not just a simple, easy little story, and people are kind of curious, but then, like the curiosity can peak and valley. And so then you get in certain questions, and then some people just going, okay, whatever. And so, like
that one.
I can only imagine like that little anxiety, and then just like almost annoyance of like, man, I don't want to even talk about this. Like I get tired of talking about my story sometimes of, bouncing around here and there. And so I can get that. That's something else.
Yeah. So tell me, like, are you guys practicing or?
I am in, I think, the best place in the world right now to be for given what's going on. We, like in Helsinki, there's been some cases. I don't think they're allowed to practice down there right now, but up here in Kuopio, there's been, I think, 500 cases max in the whole year. And so, yeah, we're Monday, Tuesday, Thursday right now. Indoor facility. I mean, it's like we need the indoor. It's like -15 here today. So, or Celsius. So I guess
that's still
zero. I think that's about zero.
Yeah.
It's cold. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And but we're full go. I'm the only import here right now. And so
how's the football? How I mean, I can compare it to some places, but what would be the closest comparison, 2 steps above Portugal or Spain, or like how's the football?
I mean, it's pretty good. Like the organization here, we got an O-line coach who did like a year or two abroad in high school, and he's only like 26, 27, but he played in the States for those year and a half, whatever. His knowledge is super good. Our head coach, OC, I mean, I don't think has much the background from the States, but is like a really cerebral dude and like common sense and like gets it. And so, and the entire coaching staff has been super impressive to me. And so that's kind of that baseline that you need in order to really like actually get better,
Yep.
And I would say, man, it's so tough to say, but like we got one Finnish receiver that, I mean, I think he's 22, 23. Like he could go and hop in the States in college D2 right now, and you wouldn't think he's not an American guy. A couple other guys that are like probably right on that cusp that would be for sure like playing in high school are right side of the O-line, which we have center, right guard, right tackle. We'll like get imports for the left side. But those 3 guys have been playing together for, I mean, they know their shit. It's so that's like offensively. And then, the main thing here that raises it is we'll end up having, probably 5 starters on defense with imports, and then 4. So me running back. Yeah. Like 4 starters on offense at imports. And so it's like, I'll admit the spots we don't have right now are just like young dudes and inexperienced guys. And so they'll probably eventually get to that level, but they're not there yet. They're at a Portuguese, less than probably, because there are some ballers out there in Portugal. Everyone hates on Portugal and Spain, and maybe they didn't have the biggest guys out there, but skill wise, there were some dudes. And but like the dudes who have been kind of established as Finnish guys, they're pretty damn good. And then you add to that whether it be American or Euro import, like I'm excited to see what kind of product we can put on the field this year. It should be pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So no, it's been, I mean, I lucked out, man, because I was in Czech Republic for 2 months before here on lockdown, and this one just kind of came up, and it was originally like, hey, come here in January when we start practice. And I said, okay, I can rent the apartment I'm in Czech Republic for December. And he goes, well, hold on a sec. He goes, well, we could get you here December 1st. Won't really pay you like that, but you could leave. He goes, the gyms are open. We'll have a couple practices in December. And I said, hey, yep, let's sign me up. Let me get me out of here. So it's crazy how this 2020 years worked, of year of the lockdown, but then I've lived in 3 different countries. So a little, I guess, like everything, a little bit polar, you know, with how life has gone. But it's I'm happy to be back here in Finland. I'm a quarter Finnish, and so I kind of feel a little connection, you know, whatever that may be.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
It's been fun. I mean, I still do miss those Portuguese days, though, to be honest with you, because that like, I think I said maybe an episode or 2 ago, like, you know, that's been obviously probably the most minimal contract I've had, especially that first year, but it was probably one of the most fun years I ever had. And to have that happen early in my life was like a really good, like, thing to learn, that like we can still have a lot of fun, not necessarily, you know, with a lot of money. And so like, on the Portugal note, like, I know we've probably talked about it at some point, but give me the story again. How did you end up there, of all places?
Yeah, man, that's I'll give you the shorter version, but out again, pastoring down in LaGrange, Georgia, about an hour outside of Atlanta, and in the Bible Belt, right? We had a good ministry. We loved the people, we loved the town, but just felt like there was a lot of, we were building on a lot of things that had already been built, right? Okay. And so we got to the place, and I'll get a little bit theological. We got to the place where we began to look at, if I strike a match, metaphorically, if I strike a match in this room and it's full of light already, how much impact am I making? If I go somewhere that the biblical knowledge or foundation is a little bit different, and I strike a match and it's darker, right? And there's not been as much of a foundation. I'm speaking from an evangelical perspective. I know the Catholic Church has been there long. Everybody's Catholic, right? In Portugal, to be Portuguese is to be Catholic. And we weren't trying to get folks to change religion, but striking that match and just saying, there are people out there that are looking for answers and truth, and may have not found it in their church, or people that just did not subscribe to, you know, been brought up in the Catholic Church. And so I was reading through the Bible one day, the book of Jonah. How familiar you are with the story?
I'm not too familiar, to be honest.
No worries. But there's a prophet. Jonah's a prophet, and so God told him to go to a place called Nineveh. Old Testament. Told him to go to a place called Nineveh and to proclaim that judgment is coming on the Ninevites. And for various reasons, Jonah said, no, I don't want to go. And the Bible says that he went down to a place called Tarshish, okay? And it's very specific that it says he went down to Tarshish to flee from the presence of the Lord. So the scenario is, God said, go to Nineveh. Jonah said, I don't want to go to Nineveh. I'm going to go in the opposite direction. I'm going to go anywhere where God is not.
Okay.
I'm getting away from God.
Gotcha.
Strange thing, strange activity or response from a prophet, right? From a man of God. Yeah. God said, go to Nineveh. He said, no, I'm going to Tarshish. So one day I'm reading and it struck me. Well,
Jonah sounds like a teenager. Sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah,
yeah.
no, you're good. And he was pretty petulant. And the book of Jonah closes with Jonah still mad at God. It goes through a lot of different things, but goes through and it closes with Jonah still mad at God, undeservedly so. But I began to look and I put two and two together. Okay, don't misunderstand. I hope that nobody misunderstands. But in my mind, this is what took place. God said, go to Nineveh. Jonah said, no, I'm going to Tarshish. And the reason why he said, I'm going to Tarshish was to flee from God's presence. So he associated in his mind Tarshish as being a godless place, or a place without God, right? I'm going in the opposite direction of where I know that God will be if I go to Nineveh. And so I said, wow, there's not a place on the map that I know of today that reads Tarshish, but where is that? Mm-hmm. Where was it? And so I began to dig and study, and this is like not really pre-internet days, but pretty prehistoric. You know,
so you had to go to the library, and
we're talking. I had to dial in to the internet, AOL, and all of that. And so I began to do some research, and Tarshish was located on the Iberian Peninsula, probably in that range between southern Portugal and Spain. Really can't pinpoint like the exact spot, but in that lower Iberian Peninsula.
Okay.
So I begin to say, wow, I wonder if like it's still kind of that, you know, known as a place maybe that doesn't have much of God's presence. I knew of some folks that were doing some mission work in our same kind of circles in Spain, but I didn't know of anybody in Portugal. And so I started picking up the phone and calling folks. I started reaching out on email, and everybody that I talked to, I'm like, hey, you know anybody that's doing any work in Portugal? No. And I was like, I knew that people were there, right? But you're talking 11 million people, and less than 0.1% would categorize himself as evangelical.
Wow.
Yeah. So we begin to say, okay, the more that we found out.
Like sorry to interrupt, but would that be like the less of anywhere else in Europe in comparatively, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a longitude, latitude, what's called the 1040 window.
Okay.
So if you look, you know, that window that kind of spans the globe, Portugal is in that. And that 1040 window kind of represents the least evangelized places on, and it's a band around around the globe. So Portugal fits into some of that 1040 window. There's just never been. I'm a Baptist by practice. You know, the first Baptist church is in Porto, in Portugal, is in Porto, and was established in like 1908 or 1910. And you're talking about thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
You know, a couple thousand, we'll say. But the first person that would say, all right, this is just highly denominated by other I won't even say religions, but other branches. I almost use a Portuguese word of you know, of religion, if you will. So we begin to pray, and man, I believe in prayer, but I begin to pray and say, send folks that will be willing to go to Portugal and you know, help these people that obviously are looking for biblical truth and that kind of thing. And the more I prayed, the more I just felt impressed. Wasn't an audible voice, right? No lightning strike from heaven, nothing like that. But it was kind of like in my spirit, God was saying, well, why don't you go? Like,
Yeah.
what's your problem? And so the more I prayed, the more I felt that way. And, you know, we picked up, we raised some financial support from churches and families, and set out, man. We moved to Portugal with, let's see, 16 suitcases.
Whoa.
We didn't ship a container. Whatever could fit in 16 suitcases. We dropped into tiny little Barcelos, and all the other, you know, missionaries went to Lisbon. Everybody goes to Lisbon when they go to Portugal, right? We wanted
You're looking at it.
Yeah, we wanted to be where nobody else was.
Yeah.
That was just kind of a pioneer sort of spirit, and so yeah, it's a crazy story, but that's why.
Damn, that's crazy. Yeah, I like yeah, send some people there, and God's like, bro, it's you, man. Like, it's,
what's your problem? What do you do?
Yeah.
And we all had all the excuses of, well, you know, we're comfortable, we like where we are, we enjoy it, and but we just couldn't get away from it. And so that's it.
And so then what was the decision for, you said Marcellus?
Barcelos.
Marcellus. Why there?
There was nothing there. So
okay.
When we went, I say there was nothing. Our research showed that there wasn't much there.
Okay.
And there that was true, but we didn't think there was any kind of presence at all. Braga being 30 minutes, let's see, I guess Braga's 30 minutes east of Barcelos, and Braga had a pretty good church and a pretty established church. We wanted to be in the north. We didn't want to go all the way up to Bragança, which is really up there in the mountains and close to Spain, but felt like that was a good compromise. And so our strategic kind of, there's, as you're looking at it, there's Esposen that's on the coast. Then you got Barcelos, and then you've got Braga further east. And so it's also kind of strategic to Porto, and we were in a good spot, but really just where nobody had gone. That was where we wanted to go. So we lived for 5 years in a little village outside of, like, when we weren't even in the city of Barcelos. We lived in a little village, and I mean, you talk to my wife, she's got some crazy stories, and I'm sure you know you're in a similar position, but crazy stories, like nobody spoke English in our village, and it was, we parachuted in. I studied some Spanish in college, hadn't studied any Portuguese. Nobody else knew any Portuguese, but we parachuted in, and we're there about a week, and my wife said, okay, I'm going to the butcher. Walked up the cobblestone path, you know, to the one butcher in the little village. She was practicing the word for chicken the whole way up there, you know, a little 3 or 4 minute walk from the house. Yeah. And she's thinking over and over. She gets up there, and the guy looks at her. She didn't really even understand what he said. The guy looks at her, you know, and what do you want? And she went blank. Like, she had said that word 100 times over and over and over. And she gets up there, and she went blank, and she started kind of looking around, and the guy's like, you know, kind of getting impatient. And so she's like, next best thing. And she started doing the chicken dance. I mean, she was flapping her wings. And so the butcher brings out a whole turkey, like with the neck on, like, you know, a 30-pound turkey, like walking out. And she's like, no, that's not what I want. And so he puts it back, and finally gets her some chicken. And then he's like, okay, what else do you want? So, you know, she snorted like a pig, and and so she just, I mean, after that, you know, everybody knew, hey, there's some foreigners around that don't speak Portuguese.
Man.
And yeah, she's great, because she will tell you she laughs a lot, and most of the time it's at herself. And so we had a great time. Tiny little village for 5 years. The next 5 years we moved into Braga,
Okay.
and we're in town. Wanted to give our kids less of the village life and more of a little bit more offering when it comes to being in the city the older they got. So yeah, and I know probably, I don't want to anticipate, but I know probably down the road it's like, well, how did football get brought about?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah, we can get there. We can go there for sure. I mean,
it
man,
was
I just that story, like, it's just funny. Like, everybody speaks body language, like that's the one thing that, I've for the most part been in some decent English speaking places, but where I was in Czech, like, not super great. But even actually that first year in Portugal, I was in Amadora, which is like one of the last metro stops of Lisbon, and like the, there wasn't too, it was pretty local, pretty like old school. And so the little bakery I'd go to, and I'd get, I can't even remember, but my little breads, and I'd same kind of thing, like rehearsing. And like, I remember one time I said, like, I wanted just 3. And so I'm, like, learning with all the shushes and so, I say tres, and however they interpret it as 13.
13.
And so, I mean, this old dude's just loading the bag up, and I'm, whoa, no, tres, but like, it's cool because, man, I didn't think about this till now. It's like, I never got to really talk to them, but there was like one time, maybe I came in there was a lot of long line, and they knew what I would get because I always got the same thing. And so I like left, and I was just like, oh, like Teja, like, and left, went up to my house, did something, came back down. Or
It was ready.
maybe I didn't have money, but anyway, I come back, and they got my bag with 3 in it,
Yeah.
and it was like, damn, like that. It was like I belonged, even though
Oh yeah.
I didn't even talk to him, and so, like, it's probably, I hope, I guess narcissistic of me to, like, I hope that that's a story for them the same way it's a story for me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We we have folks, and I know there are different cultures even in America, but I liken the northern the Minho, the northern part of Portugal, to the southern part of the States. And so, like, we would go the first year we were there, we didn't have a nice yard for Portuguese standards, but not a big place, but we wanted to put in a little vegetable garden. And man, I'm not hoeing that whole thing up. So I went to the little motorcycle, like, fix it shop, single engine shop, at the end of our road. And I'm talking to the guy, and I'm like, hey, can I rent a tiller from you? Can I? And he's like, what are you talking about? Rent. And I'm like, I've got one, you just borrow it. And I'm like, no, I don't want to impose. He's like, no, seriously. When do you want it? I'm like, I don't know, whenever. He's like, I'll be there in 30 minutes. I'll just deliver it to you. And I'm like, for real? And he's like, yeah, you mean do it for you? You want me to, like, run it? And I'm like, no. One of the ways that I learned Portuguese, our next door neighbor, he had could have been a vineyard, but he lived off the land. I went to him and I'm like, hey, I would love to come and just, like, if you'll talk to me, if I can help you plant potatoes, and we'll speak only Portuguese, like, and he's like, well, I want, I'll pay you. And I'm like, no, you don't have to pay me. I just want to, it's kind of a trade-off. Like, you're going to help me learn a little bit of Portuguese, and I'm going to help you. And he's like, yeah, sure. So I helped him plant potatoes. I helped him for a little bit, build his little chicken coop that he was putting in. And we just had about a 2.5 foot wall that separated us. And he'd get one of the kids to come in and tell me, and he'd give us a 30-pound sack of potatoes or a 10-pound bag of onions, or just like, hey, I mean, shirt off your back, kind of, not asking for anything, and salt of the earth, best people. And I know they're everywhere, right?
Yeah.
In Czech Republic, I know they're in Finland, I know that, but just, we've got some really cool experiences that folks just went out of their way for people that like, they didn't know me from Adam, right?
Yeah.
I'm a British guy.
And, or Russian.
Yeah, could have been, no telling. But there were the longer we lived in the village, there were two theories that were floated about. Even though, we told everybody, hey, we're, pastoring a church, like that kind of thing. There were two theories that floated about. I'll let you take a stab at what we actually were there doing.
Man, the weird one that just popped in my head was like, you're running away from something, or like a criminal or something. But maybe that's my own. Maybe that's me. That's maybe me projecting or something.
Yeah.
Who knows?
No, the theories that were bantered about. It's a small village, right? So everybody knew everybody's business. And that kind of thing. But I was either in the CIA.
Okay. So kind of opposite, maybe a criminal, depending on who you talk to these days.
Right. Why there? Like with the, not a hot spot, right? In that little tiny Portuguese village that there needs a lot of CIA presence. But that we won the lottery, and in America, and we just decided that we were gonna land there, and we didn't buy any prop. We would win the lottery, but we would rent a house. Like, so we would hear things and people would be like, you mean you didn't win the lottery? And I'm like, what? No. You see the car that I drive? Like, and it was just, we had a great time, but things that people dream up.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, that's some small town cafe coffee talk right there, is what that is, like, to the maximum. But yeah, it's funny how those like little things, like of like your neighbor, you're saying, like, just make you like want to be involved. And I think that was a big reason that I like, and still do, like, have such a love and appreciation for Portugal. I say that's where I want to retire eventually, and that's where I'd like to end up. And is because there's just those weird little, my bakery story, and there's countless other little ones like that where, like, there was this dog that I'd always be out the window as I was walking home, that, like, it just, like, I knew him. I was DJ. I knew the lady that, was his owner, and we never knew each other, but we knew each other. And, but so you never took any classes? Like, you just learned?
Well, we had a tutor that came, private, lady, wasn't like language school, but we had a lady that came a couple hours a week, and had private lessons. But a lot of the way that I learned was just like going to the store. Nobody spoke English, so there wasn't that kind of crutch, and just figuring it out, turning the TV on, and that kind of thing. Making a lot of mistakes, and I did a funeral, and this is after we had been there. Embarrassed to say how long, but I did a funeral for a lady in our church whose mother passed away, and kind of giving a eulogy and a Bible message, and I'm talking about our dear sister that passed away, and our dear sister in the coffin, right? And I'm making mention of, so I use that word coffin a couple of times. And 2 days later, I think, or the very next day, in church, and not the lady whose mother passed away, but another lady in church came up to me and she said, "Pastor, you have got to stop doing that." And I said, "Doing what?" And she said, "Yesterday at the funeral." And I'm like, "Oh no, what did I do?" And she said, "You don't know?" And I'm like, "No, I have no idea." And so the word for coffin is caixão.
Caixão, okay. Oh, like big box.
Big box.
Yeah.
And I don't know how or why or whatever, but apparently the word that I said every single time I said coffin was caixote.
Caixote. I don't even know. I don't know that one.
It's a dumpster.
Oh my God.
So the whole time I am our dear sister who's in the dumpster right here.
Oh no.
And I said, no, I did not. And she said, yes, you did. And so I went to the daughter, right? I'm so sorry. She would tell you today, like she never picked up, she, in such grief, like she never even noticed. She didn't remember. She didn't, but I was mortified. Like you just make mistakes and going about it. And I said, well, that'll be one that I'll never make again. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
never
You yeah, the
dumpster.
distinction is always there. And shit, I'll remember those two words now with that story,
That's
like
right. That's right.
I mean,
So yeah, we I remember one day I was on the coast early on, and I was walking down kind of the boardwalk area. I think I'd been for a run. It was a nice day out, and I was just kind of frustrated in how much impact we had been able to make, because it's just slow going initially.
okay.
And I just wasn't down on my knees like groaning or really in agony, but just, hey Lord, you know what, I would really love to be able to take my knowledge of the game of football and to use it to use it to be able to have an impact on other people's lives. And my mind immediately goes like, well, we'd have to get a bunch of equipment, and you have to, I'm thinking like immediately. But it was a simple kind of one-off. Man, that would be a really cool thing to do. I'd love to be able to do that, and forgot about it. And I don't know, probably 3 months later, I was in a meeting with kind of an advisory board of one of the churches in Braga, and there was another American that was there that was invited to that meeting that one time to kind of, he had just gotten to Portugal within the last year or so of that, and he began to talk about sort of his ministry and what he was doing, and he said, yeah, and I don't know much about football, but I'm helping a bunch of guys that are just starting to play football. And I'm like, well, wait, time out. So like interrupted the meeting. We definitely need to talk when all this is over. And from that was, with the Warriors, I started going to practice, and they're like, hey, will you coach us? And so it kind of went from there. Really cool experience. I don't know if you know about those early days.
No, I mean,
Like,
I've heard bits and pieces, and but like, no, I mean, I just know the Navigators always killed everybody. That's all I really know.
yeah. So the first year of the Warriors, I think they played 10 games and lost all 10, or might have played the Renegades and like an exhibition at the very end and tied them or something. But it was it just massive. You know how that goes. Like,
Yeah. I feel like that is from all of the starting stories of European football teams. It's almost always, I feel like, that exact is like we tied or we won one game 6-3 or 7-6 or something like that.
Exactly. So I came in, and we had some good athletes, we had some good players, but I came in and said, okay, here's we're gonna run an offense, we're gonna run a defense, and that year we went to the championship game, and that was that kind of first big production. We had it in Braga. There was I think like 4,000 or 5,000 people that ended up showing up. It's in this, the big, like old, really traditional stadium. The television folks came out, like Sport TV was there covering it. Like, I mean, it was a big deal. But I could remember we had a pretty good year, but everything was I formation. Everything was super, super old school, like almost draw it in the dirt. And I came in and said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to spread it out a little bit. and I gave a wristband. We started with a wristband.
Okay.
But all I did was I had 10 or 12 plays that we would ever run. I put them all on a wristband, and I had a wristband for the left tackle. I had a wristband for the left guard.
Okay,
I had a wristband
gotcha.
for the center. And all it said was, didn't even have the name of the play. All it said was block down, kick out,
Yeah.
double team. They did not care whatever else was going on, but they looked at that, and that's all they had to do. And
You're
we
literally playing chess with people is what you're
that's
in a
all
way.
it was.
Yes.
You move here.
Yeah.
And so we got to the semifinals, and we were playing the Crusaders.
Okay.
We had a pretty close game with the Crusaders, but the week before that game, I said, all right, here's what we're going to do. And I put in the old diamond, like split 4 out right, shotgun empty, and said, we're going to run like 3 plays.
Yeah.
It was the like nobody had ever seen a bubble screen in Portugal.
What year was this?
That was in we got there in 10 or 11.
Okay.
And so like probably the 4th year, 3rd or 4th year of maybe the 4th or 5th year of the league.
Okay, gotcha.
You know, the Navigators had won 3 or 4 years in a row, and then we came in, and I mean, it would be like in that semifinal and then final game, it was shotgun snap to the quarterback, and he either throws it, and he's got 3 lead blockers, or you know, we had a guy split out left that was a big rangy guy, shotgun, and he's just going to run either a slant or a go route, or it's a quarterback draw, like,
yep.
And blew their minds. Blew their minds. And we had a great time. And then the next year I came in and put in more of like a real sort of spread offense that we started running. And then everybody started going to, oh, we better open it up a little bit. And I think the Navigators were the only ones left running that eye. Yeah. Even if you didn't have the horses to run that, everybody started doing it. So when I started the Black Knights, you know, I didn't have a guy that could throw a football 10 yards.
You're right.
Like, we got the craziest thing. We got our pads 3 weeks before our first game.
Oh my God. What, and how'd you get the pads? You got them just shipped? How'd you acquire them?
We had a guy that, he wouldn't appreciate if I said who it was, but a well-known soccer player in the Portuguese league that I called up and said, hey man, I'm doing this. And he said, I'm on board, and dropped enough for us to buy, 25 helmet shoulder pads, brand new. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think we bought, with that first chunk, we bought our first uniforms.
Okay. Yeah. The story
start.
of the spread is just crazy to me because, I know the Black Knights from when I was there, and like kind of wing tee, single wing,
that's exactly what it was. I was like, okay, I've been doing all these other things, but I've got to go back because I don't have a guy that can throw the ball.
Yeah.
At all, period. So what do you do? When I was in high school, we had one game we played against, and they ran the old Notre Dame box, which was a single wing.
Yeah.
But I started looking, and I said, okay, we're going to go back, unbalanced single wing. We're going to snap it to one guy or another guy. You don't have to throw the ball. We're going to have 6 plays, unbalanced line. It's going to mess with everybody's head. And we had a lot of fun doing it. I mean, we confused some folks and won a few games that nobody expected us to win. So,
yeah, man, that's great. It's funny.
And if you look at, I get really cerebral when I get into offense, but if you look at I mean, Gus Malzahn, his offense is a single wing offense. His origins are there's a lot in there, but if you look at what you can do out of that, there's a guy down in Apopka, Florida. I think he's still down there, and he has players that go D1 all the time. He's in like 7A, and he runs the unbalanced single wing, and he started off same 6 plays. As he began to get more athletes, he still runs unbalanced single wing, but it's a spread, and it's a super cool offense.
Yeah, no, those type of things. Like, I mean, I have a huge appreciation for the wing tee single, all that is. My dad was my coach from 9 until high school, and he grew up, was a wing tee quarterback in Eastern Washington. And so, I mean, that's all I ran for in that time frame. And it wasn't until, I liked it in the first couple of years just to be playing football. And then by the end, I'm like, yo, Dad, I'm trying to throw the ball, and I always joke to him that, like, because he was a quarterback too, but he gave me my love for football. And he also, like, I learned how to hand off the ball from him. That was what he really contributed for me. But no, in Washington State, Bellevue High School, I think they won 10 out of 11 state championships, 11 out of 12, partially while I was there, with the wing tee. And I mean, they would do some funky stuff and then go down and play Long Beach Poly or, De La Salle or whoever, and smack them because, like, it's something, like you said, it's going to mess with somebody's heads. And then 2, you get the athletes in those spots where you make one wrong read, one wrong miss, one wrong decision, and it's 6 every time. And so, the single it's all coming full circle. Cause like I said, that's what I thought of, like, I'm glad we're getting into this because, like, I thought, like, okay, like that was his thing, and realizing, no, that was just by necessity that's what you were.
Absolutely by necessity. Yeah. And had a lot of fun, and taught some kids some about football. We never went back to the this is your that was a first year, and we loved it. But there was it was just really easy to do. And that way to teach,
Sure. No. And the Portuguese, the thing I loved so much about being there and playing there and kind of coaching there was, like, man, one, they're smart dudes. And, like, because of the newness, I think, factor, like, the biggest sponges of anybody I've been around in Europe. Right. And it was like, I mean, like, we'd install some stuff on Huddle, and, like, the next practice, like, everybody knew their stuff. Like, there was no, like, oh, I didn't get to see it or whatever. Like, it was like clockwork. And so, I mean, it made my job easy. And I mean, my question with this is, like, because you got into a team that had already kind of been practicing, like, do you have any, like, good story about, like, either just, like, guys being clueless or, like, something of like, we need to change this right now? Because I got one for you after, but, like,
no, you go first.
Okay. My first year in the Devils, and if Duarte and Amarine listen to this, they'll laugh because I didn't freak out, but so anyway, the story is, I get there and we do our warm up, and then we'd play this game called Kaisha, box. And basically in the soccer goal box, or, whatever it is, basically it was like keep away, offense versus defense, forward passes, backwards passes, kind of running. There were no rules. It was kind of throw it, and whoever could get, like, 10 passes in a row won, and 10 completions. And so there's linemen, there's D-line, there's guys who can't catch. And for the first, like, 3-4 passes, or first we did it. We were in Santa Cruz for like a training camp kind of thing. And so I'm like, okay, this is a fun little beach game that we're playing. And then I get back, we're on the field and we start doing it. And for maybe the first 5 passes, no one's really touching each other. It's almost like ultimate frisbee in a way. But then as soon as someone got close to winning, like it got serious and guys are kind of tackling each other and it just became dangerous in my mind, you know? And so I think I don't know, we probably did it 2 times. And I told Duarte or Amarine, I was like, you know, after the second time, I was like, yo, we got to stop doing this game. Like one, like we're wasting like 15 minutes. Like, let me throw some routes to these guys. And 2, someone's going to get hurt, you know, like unnecessarily. And then maybe that next week, I think I'd told Amarine, and then that next week we did it again and Duarte was at practice. And I went up to Duarte. I was like, if we play this game again, I am going to freak the fuck out. And so like to this day, one of my best friends, one of our linebackers, Lorenzo, like he loved that game because he got to touch the ball. And so like anytime I'm back, he'll remind me, Joey, you ruined Kaisha. We never got to play Kaisha ever again because of you. And I was like, hey,
Hilarious.
we didn't lose though. So, all right, it was a trade-off, all right, you know, but that was the one. I went up to Duarte and I wish I could have seen myself because like, oh, I was intense over this Kaisha game. And I was like, Duarte, if we play it again, I am going to freak out. And like, okay, we don't want that. So Kaisha got retired after that day.
Yeah. We, I think the biggest frustration, I mean, there are a ton of stories. I would go back and forth. And when by the time you got there, it was a little bit better.
Yeah.
The officiating was a little bit better. But I had a little bit. I can tell you story after story after story. The one that I guess that sticks out in my mind, you know, they understand the concept of half the distance to the goal.
Okay.
So if you got a holding penalty on the 8-yard line, or if you had a pass interference, you know, on either side, like, but if the offense is going in, you get a pass interference on the 11-yard line. They put it like on the 1-inch line. And I'm like, no, it's half the distance to the goal. Or they would, you know, you're on the 8-yard line and you get a holding call. They put it on the 1-inch line. Like they put it all the way back. And I'm like, that's not how it works. And just frustrating, over and over and over again. I butted heads so bad with the officials because just completely clueless about what we consider like my 16-year-old daughter that, you know, sleeps during the game. She knew that was wrong. Right. And so things like that. I do remember one thing that sticks out. We had with the Knights, we were kickoff return, so team's kicking us, and our receiver is, do I get it? Do I let it go out of bounds? Do I not? Like, you know, it's kind of in that weird bouncing thing. And so he runs up to the ball. He's out of bounds, right? But the ball is still in bounds, and he picks it up and like takes off running. And I'm like, so the ball's dead right there on like the, 2-yard line.
Yeah.
He's standing out of bounds and he picks up the ball, right? And I'm like, he comes back and I'm just losing it. And he's like, Coach, I didn't know. I thought it was like soccer. Like the ball's in bounds.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Doesn't matter if I'm out of bounds. And I'm like, okay, that's on me. Like, that's something that I just imagine that, because there's so many things that I just would have to take a step back and kind of laugh and go, I just didn't teach that. But who thinks to teach those kinds of things?
And I think that situation, I think I could be wrong too, but that might be even some weird football rule where like, it could be deemed a touchback or something, or like a flag for kicked out of bounds since he was, I don't know. There's something like when you say that,
The first one to touch
like,
it.
that could even be like a weird, crazy rule in itself.
Yeah. We had a guy one time playing defense, and and his first game, he didn't understand the concept of like the quarterback, the offense going on two. So, when the quarterback got to hut, like set hut, like he thought, well, that's where everybody, that's when everybody like takes off. And so they're on two, like three times, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, he's not snapping the ball when it's supposed to be snapped. I'm like,
yeah, I mean, speaking of that, one of our best plays was freeze, of just no play call, draw them off sides, and just huck it deep to Colin. That was because for that reason. I mean, I didn't realize that some guys the center messed up, not me.
That's right. Yeah, it's not my fault. He didn't snap it when he was supposed to. Hey, you gotta be kidding me. sit over there, and I'll tell you about it later. Yeah. But man, we had a lot of fun.
Well, and how did you come to start the Black Knights?
Yeah, that's a little bit of that's a good question. I think the Warriors felt like they could do a good job without me, and it was probably somewhere in between. Like it might have been time for me to go, and I had guys that came to me that said, you need to do something. You need to be involved. You need to start. And I said, you know what? I've never probably again will have this kind of opportunity.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go and start something new and see what we could do.
Okay.
So it was, we had a, as the Portuguese would say, there was a parting of the waters.
Okay.
So, yeah, and there are probably some guys out there that still didn't like the fact that I left, and but I don't know, water under the bridge.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yep.
And so and then I guess let's get back into like growing up playing football. Like what's, coming from Alabama, like that's life down there. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
And then you played at Army as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Played for 2 years at Army. Blew my knee out, and you go back and talk to the orthopedist that was there whenever I blew my knee out. He even 25 years later, he's gonna say, "Yep, I remember that one. It was I blew my ACL, medial and lateral meniscus, a bunch of cartilage." Part of the bone, like my leg, it was a fracture in the bone. So I went in, and they thought it was just a simple ACL, right? They didn't think it was that big a deal. And my parents came up for the surgery and said, "Look, probably about an hour and a half surgery." It was a 3.5 hour surgery.
Wow.
And yeah, and it was it was pretty involved, the rehab. And so I just got to the point where I said, man, came back fully healed, but it was just torture every day to go out there and practice and grind. And then my knees swell up. I'd sit in the ice bath for, a half hour every day, and just knowing this is 2 more years and it's done. Like there's not any future in this.
Yeah.
But I had a series of surgeries all together, and the Army came and said, "Look, peacetime. If it were right now, they'd say rub some dirt and get back in there." But the Army said, "We're going to give you your degree, and you're not going to get a commission in the Army." But it was a seminal moment for me because football was all I knew.
Okay.
Growing up, my dad was a coach.
Okay.
And coached when I was a kid, wasn't a coach, never coached me, but my dad was a coach. And so I grew up around the game, and it became really kind of an idol to me in a lot of senses, of the only thing that I knew. And it was super important, going from, the day that I said, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm not torturing myself, to, for 2 more years, and going through just the grind that it takes, and shin splints and everything. It was a wreck. If I go run 2 miles a day, my knee's going to still swell up like a grapefruit.
Damn.
It's just not right. But, I said, look, the day that I didn't go after class up to the field house, with my brothers, with my guys, class is over. Well, now what do I do? I mean, it was like, there's a huge hole. What goes there?
Man,
yeah.
I can only imagine, because like, as you say that, I think you saw kind of my reaction. I was, like, in a way, I'm slowly kind of developing some things outside of it, but, and some ideas of what's next possibly, but there's always coaching. But I mean, I'm at 30 right now with
Right.
no real job ever done, which I kind of take pride in. And, I wouldn't say, I try not to say it's my identity, but it is something I
It's
know
a
really
piece of
well.
who you are.
It's part of who I am. And it's something that I know pretty damn, I probably know it better than most other things in my life. And not saying I know everything about it, but for me, it's what I know best. And so I can only imagine when, like you said, is you
Yeah.
don't go that hole.
Right. And so, and for me, like at that point, I had my position coach, receiver coach, said, I told him, hey coach, man, I can't do this anymore. And he said, I get it. I respect you for, for saying, when it's time, that kind of thing. He said, do you want to coach? Like, would you like to stay with the team and, continue, and we can find a role where, you can help us. And hindsight 2020, all that. I said at that point, you know what? I need a clean break.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know that I could go from switch that role and still be, have that kind of fulfillment and satisfaction. So I said, no, thank you, coach, but I got to step. I got to go. And that emptiness, that hole that was created from, the most important thing in my life at the time, that being taken away from me, got me to a place over the next, 2 to 2.5 years of recognizing my kind of, I don't know if this will make sense or not, but I was just kind of lost.
Uh-huh.
And that was what sort of began my path towards becoming a pastor.
Okay.
And the recognition of, I've got a hole in my life that needs to be filled by something. And there wasn't anything that for me that could fill it outside of a relationship with my creator.
Gotcha.
And that was that kind of pivotal moment, that allowed me to hear, if you will, those things. And had I not, would have just been football, would have served that purpose until it ran its course. Maybe I would have got into coaching, who knows? But it's really cool to see. And one of the things that I really believe right now, like my life is how it's supposed to be right now in this moment. And I don't want to wish away my present for looking towards the future. And, I look at the kind of full circle that I did take from no, I'm stepping aside. But I did get to coach. I did get back into coaching for those, what was it? I was 7 years.
Yeah.
I did get into having an impact on the field and off the field with a bunch of guys that are super important to me. I never thought I would have that, right? My dad, and the most impactful coach that I had on my life, my position coach in high school, still really close with him today. But both my dad and my coach in high school, they told me, they said, don't ever be a coach. You don't want to be a coach. And that kind of set in my mind. And I think back then it was, you don't make any money.
Okay.
Okay. It's kind of it's a grind, and you're not well paid for it, and all of those things. And so that stuck it. Nope, not going to become a coach.
Okay. No, man, that's
but the path toward that is just really cool. And the way that God took me from where I was to, that point, I was away from the game for a long time because I just couldn't, I followed college football, that kind of thing, but just disconnected. And priorities changed, but then I was able to use it to make an impact. So that's what I really enjoy.
It's cool to hear. Like, I by no means would call myself very religious, but I at least, I guess, from a like fundamental level, in the sense of like, I believe in a creator. I believe in, I wouldn't mind getting into this too, but like, I guess I don't believe in a book per se, but I kind of have my own thing. But what you just said with the path of where I'm at now, and I don't want to, look back at the past, affect the now, look forward to the present and affect the now. And a thing that I've kind of taken to be my own little mantra throughout all of this stuff. And we can all go back from, hey, if I didn't do this, I wouldn't have met this person. And if I don't met this person, I don't go here. And if I don't go here, exactly. And so my thing I've come through that I view as kind of my own little verse, if I can call it that, is like, it is as it should be. And the timing is always right. And, it's like, that's also, it's like super easy to say that when shit's going well, and then it's like, that's when things aren't going great, I got to always remind myself, like, hey, dude, you do believe in this thing. Like, right. So this is where we're supposed to be and how things are supposed to go. And so, I mean, like, to hear it, that's what I love about doing this and talking to everybody, and like getting a similar idea, similar perspective, but in a different lens or a different angle, is so cool to me. And I mean, then to switch gears to the coaching thing, man, I did one off season. I coached running backs at my alma mater, University of New Haven. And first, I get why, I think you made the right decision, as I've just said, with your past of like cutting it off where you cut it off and give it. But also because I think I was like 28 at the time when I was there. And it's like, I still feel like, I can do what the guy on the field's doing. And so that shit was annoying at times, because it's like, I think I got one more year. Let me go, but then on top of that, to like your dad and your coach said, man, those are some long hours for not very much money. And at the end of the day, it's like, hey, we're talking about a game, like we're getting paid to draw some X's and O's, more or less. Obviously there's a lot more and a lot less to it too. And so it's good and bad.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's got to be, I think it's got to be almost a calling to be in that. I want to be a high school coach, or, even not everybody is Nick Saban or Dabo Sweeney, obviously, but to be in that, hey, I'm gonna pour my life into these guys, and I've got a lot of respect for those high school coaches that that see it as a ministry, that see it as,
Yes.
I am going to take the wisdom of experience and help mold men over time. And I know that my coaches had a sincere and super profound impact on me. And like I said, I called him just a couple of weeks ago, and hey, coach, you guys okay? The whole COVID thing, you guys okay? Yeah, we're staying in. You need anything? No, we're good. Pick up the phone and call me. Like, you need to move a mattress. You need to he's getting on up in years, and no, I'm good. And so it's one of those that you do really, have the ability to be an agent of change.
Yes.
And not just check the box for a paycheck. And so my dad did it and he loved it. But he also saw, I got to do something else to kind of make ends meet. He was an SEC basketball official and baseball umpire for 20 years.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So we grew up around the game, and interesting kind of path that he took. But yeah.
Damn. Yeah. No, I mean, as you've said, like, I had my buddy Brandon Gibson on, and he's, after a 6-7 year NFL career, he's coaching up in high school in Washington. And, his thing that he said that stuck with me was just that, using the vehicle of football to teach life.
Yep.
And that's, as I mentioned in the beginning, a thing that I like so much about the American sports system. I could probably talk badly about some other parts of but there's good and bad with everything. But to me, the way that we kind of combine school and sports together, but then also, like, it's viewed as something that can trickle over into life, which, I think it depends on the coach you get, no matter where you are, but that's just much more of a common theme in the States. I've noticed that, like, where, I feel in Europe, sometimes it's just like, it's a hobby. It's just something it's just a thing I do, and so that's where, I have such a appreciation and, like, pride for the American way of that, and it's the guys that are truly doing it that make it that way, and there's some guys who are checking the box, like you said, but for the most part, I think odds say it's the other way around. At least I like to think that in my mind.
That's right. I think a lot of our political issues could be solved by us all being in a locker room, football locker room, and that, like, it just, not to get way out of bounds, but we're so divided.
Yes.
In our country today that it doesn't happen like that for the most part, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in a locker room, on a football team, where, and I'd say the military is another kind of, everybody's green. Like, you don't see color, you don't see politics. Everybody's green. In the military, on the football field, you don't care, who somebody voted for, or didn't vote for, or whatever. You don't care what their thought. It is about being connected and serving, your brother that's next to you, and taking care of one another, and being family. And so, a lot of ways to solve a lot of different problems, but man, we could use that locker room mentality a lot of times in our culture today, and it's just getting lost.
I totally agree. I mean, that's what man, I've said it to friends and other, is like, it doesn't matter, like you said. And I think football, you know, I'm biased, but I think football more than other sports also because of the sheer number of it and the fact that, like, if the left tackle messes up, like, I could get hurt, you know, and it's, you know, there's much more, I don't want to say life and death compared to the military, but
Right.
in of any sport, it's much more, uh, there's more risk or, you know, injury
Yeah. Yeah.
because of someone not doing their job.
There are consequences, unlike in basketball or handball or whatever. Yeah, there are consequences if someone decides to freelance.
Exactly. And so, like you said, is if we could all get that, just that feeling, because like you said, man, I don't care what you look like, who you are. Can you help us win? And are, you know, then are you a nice guy too? I'd like you to be a nice guy, but first and foremost, can you help us win? And
Yep.
we're all working. And again, it gives that common goal to everyone to work for. And, you know, beauty of the US is that we're so different, and, you know, it's such a melting pot. But then I think it's now, you know, creating some problems at time. And I'm not like trying to be anti-immigration or anything, but like, there's so many different goals is all I'm saying, you know,
Mhm.
is like, is everyone, we don't have one kind of singular goal that we're working towards, that, you
Right.
know, just for example, like a Finland, like, I think they have some less issues because for the most part, it's a homogenized, you know, country. And so there's, in a lot of people's mind, there might be one more goal or one more singular goal than we have. And it's like the good and the bad, the blessing and the curse of everything.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, I think you nailed it on the head with, if being in that locker room and doing some two-a-days and sweating with some dudes and crying and fighting, and, you know, but then at the end of the day, like, that's my guy, and
That's right.
we got to go beat those guys, you know, and it could be hugely beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah.
um Kind of, I want to pick your mind a little bit too on, um with, like, did you always grow up religious? And so, like, was that, as you said, the whole of leaving football, was it
Yeah.
kind of obvious then to get in, or then how did the,
No, no, that's I understand where you're getting at. Yes and no. So being
okay,
in the Bible Belt, right? I mean,
right,
I grew up. My parents are divorced. Lived with my mom. We went to church when I was a kid. That was part of, you know, growing up. Um, I moved in with my dad. We went sometimes. When I got in high school, we went sometimes, but it wasn't as big a part. I went to college. I went to the military academy, and I studied philosophy and literature. And so
okay,
I got to the point where, for me, and I know I'm not going to say there's your truth and my truth and all that. I think there is objective, black and white. There's truth and there's lie. There's truth and there's falsehood. But for me, um, in it, I got into philosophy and literature. Football was taken away, and so my goal began. Well, there's this thing, there's this hole, and I need to fill it. And my desire, my mission was, I want to find something that's true. Sun comes up today, or if it doesn't, I know I can hold on to this, and this is true. And I know if the world falls around me and everything goes to pot, I know I can still hold on and say, this is true.
okay,
Okay. And, you know, and I studied, and Plato and Aristotle and Nietzsche and, you know, John Stuart Mill and all sorts of different branches of philosophy and different philosophies. And I still felt empty.
mm,
And I still felt I hadn't arrived at that truth. I had not arrived at that point where I could say, I'm going to go to my grave believing and knowing that this is absolutely, like, this is true.
Mm-hmm.
And that went on for a couple of years. When I was in school, I graduated. I came back to Birmingham. I got married 2 weeks after graduation. And a crazy story, but about, let's see, 4 months later, my wife says, "Hey, I want you to, let's go to church." Her uncle was a pastor. I said, "Let's go to church." I'd already kind of been exposed to the church, and I said, "No, I don't want to go there." It was important for her. There was something going on that day, and she said it would really mean a lot to me if we were able to go, and this specific Sunday. And I went, and believe it or not, some people do, some people don't. That's fine. But the pastor spoke that day, and he opened the Bible, and it was like he knew, and he didn't, but he knew every single thing that was going on in my life.
Uh-huh.
He knew where I'd been. He knew, and everything he said hit me square between the eyes. And I had an experience where I knew that day Plato and Aristotle and Nietzsche and all of those things paled in comparison to the truth that I heard, that he preached, spoke about, expounded on. And at that moment, it was, okay, this is what I'm giving my life to study, to live, to prove, to be an example of. And that was it. So yeah, there was a time.
But up until that day,
yeah, what would I call myself?
Yeah. But you hadn't been a regular churchgoer in a while.
No.
Okay.
So I guess what I left out, I mean, my path to studying philosophy and literature, and majored in philosophy, right? But that got me further and further. So I went from going to church to studying philosophy that brought me to a place where I would initially say I waffled between agnosticism and atheism. And I got to the point where, yeah, I would have told you there's no God. I don't believe there is a God. Well, there may be a God, but he probably isn't concerned with what's going on.
Okay.
Or else the world would be a better place. So that's that, atheism, agnosticism, like, is there a God? Is he as powerful as people say he is? Like, is he concerned? Do I care? Does he care? Does it make a difference, to me? I believe that, the traditional, like, Christian perspective of what we find in the Bible, that there was a man who walked this earth. His name was Jesus, and he died on a cross. And I am forgiven by God because Jesus died in my place. And you say, that's as crazy as I'll ever hear. It is real to me. And that faith in very basic tenet of Christianity, that faith is who I am. So you talk about, identity, like that kind of,
yeah.
that is who I am. And with God's grace, go to my grave saying, I believe the things that are written in that book, in that Bible. And you say, why? It's proven in my life. So I was in a dark place coming out of the academy. Won't go into the things I did or what was going on, but I was at, end of my rope, we would say in English.
Okay.
Portuguese, they would say bottom of the well,
Yeah.
I was at the bottom of the well that day that I was presented with that truth that that I trust and believe and accept as truth today. And so crazy kind of, again, path from, yeah, there was some religion I never accepted or wholeheartedly bought into. And, as a teenager, got into, I'd say, a lot of trouble, but did a lot of things teenagers do. And, but got to the place where I was completely, on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, no, there's no God. To, yeah, there is. And he is concerned with the things that go on today on earth, me, you, our lives. Might have been more you're asking for, but
no, that's exactly what I was trying to hit at. Because I mean, to me, it's just like any path for any belief for, like I, over this, my life, like I really like the idea of being able to change my mind on some things, but also there's like a balance of, you want to be strong on something and like finding these ultimate truths that, you speak of, but then on things, I guess more so I'm speaking like, I was vegan for a couple years, because to me, like that, like the information that I had read and what was presented to me and how I believed and what I thought, like that was the right thing. But then I was presented some new information. And now I had a steak for breakfast, and so, it's changed. And I think I've, at certain points similar on the theology kind of things, like either atheism, agnosticism, or agnostic is,
yeah, agnosticism. Yeah.
agnosticism. I struggle with some of those words. And then, and now it's like, I guess, I don't know what to like exactly call where I'm at now, but like a lot, I tend to relate well, or, attract, or I don't know exactly the right way to say it, but like get along well with Christian ideology and beliefs and people. And because of, maybe I don't exactly believe in this thing, but I totally believe in the idea behind it, and kind of maybe have my own little way of thinking it. But I also know, like maybe that it could change and it could come about. There could be some, the thing I would say with it, like, I'm not sure, and so like, I respect and like appreciate that, like, you're like, yo, I'm sure on this one, like I've gotten to a point, like I'm sure, and it's gotten me to this point, and that's cool. Like I'm at a point where I kind of, like I said, got these theories, ideas, but I'm not sure. And so I like to know how people get to maybe the sureness, and so like that was a big thing for me of wanting to ask that, because I mean, I guess to expand a little, just to explain myself of, you know, it's like I kind of, and maybe, and I'd like maybe be curious to see how this relates, is like my belief essentially, like I'm a big believer in like the universe, and like, I kind of see like God as everything in a way. And so like he's in me, he's in you, he's in, he's in everybody, he's in everything. In a sense, I think we all have the power of, like, not that I am God, but there's a small piece of it in me. And, I fully believe that like human beings in general, like we're so much more powerful from a, for sure, like mental ability than we are led to believe, whether, physical too, but like really like our minds can really do some crazy stuff if we really want it to. And yeah, I guess that would kind of be my basis, is that it's it's out there in everything, in everyone. And, you know, I don't know how that exactly relates or compares, because I'll be honest, I don't know too much about Christianity besides the like stereotypical stuff. One thing I would eventually like to do, just from like a research side, is like read the Old Testament and read the, you know, just to like, as, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but as like entertainment, you know, like as, and something to learn from, and see, maybe I, like you, read something or hear something that it's like, yo, like that, you know. So that's where I'm at, I guess.
Yeah. I had, there's a guy, he was a pilot, well, not a big, airline pilot, but flew, for a private, jet company in Portugal. And he started coming to the church. A friend invited him, and he's a Portuguese guy, spoke really good English. He was an interesting guy, but he came once and talked to him after church. And hey, Miguel was his name. Hey, you know, Miguel, you got any questions or, you know, thoughts? And he said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I said, what? He said, I'm going to read the Bible. And then when I get done reading the Bible, I'll ask you all the questions I have. And of course, I'm thinking, all right, this dude's he's never, no way, right? Everybody said, I'm going to read the Bible. And I'm like, no. That guy, and it took him about, I want to say about 6 months, cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation. He read the Bible. He got done. We had lunch, and I said, all right, hit me with them. What are the questions? He said, you know what happened? I said, no. He said, all the questions that I had got answered by the time I got finished reading the Bible. I said, really? He said, there is one. And it was something, I don't know, something about, you know, Satan, the devil, whatever. And he was like, and I told him, and he was like, yeah, that's what I thought. I was just making sure. And I was like, you know, that's probably a one in a million kind of. And he said, I'm going to read the Bible cover to cover. He was in church for a long time, and then he moved down to Lisbon. But really super, one of those that he learned about himself. He learned about the Bible, got a hold of faith that kind of you know, transformed his life even at a pretty young age. I would say that not just the Old Testament with you. The Old Testament is pretty. There's some stuff where you look and go, man, Bible like talks about incest, and it talks about like crazy stories going on in the Old Testament, and that from an anthropological perspective, like study of human nature kind of thing, you look and you go, wow, how did that happen? Okay. You know, where are we in that kind of society? It really super interesting to kind of consider different cultures and what goes on. So I would definitely recommend it, but there are some spots where it gets really dry, and you gotta power through it, because you get into Leviticus and you get into some of those books that just talk about Old Testament law and you know, the Levitical diet and why you should not eat crawfish and whatever else, right?
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that changed my life.
Well, for sure. No, I mean, it's something that interests me, because I like the idea of people and beliefs and thoughts and you know, I mean, thoughts are things, and you know, it's a little rambling, and you know, I have I guess I left out in a way of, you know, it's like part of me, you know, wants to say like nobody's right, but then in a way I think I like the idea that almost everybody can be right in a way too, you know, like, and maybe that's wrong, but like It's just, I guess that's me trying to be hippie and look at things a little more positively than, saying they are right, everyone's right, then everyone's wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like it's like, I'd like to just do the outward research of all of them, because it's like there's the negative and positive stigmas with whatever religion it may be, and that I there's something to, I don't have the words exactly right now, but it's
Here's what I would tell you that is a major difference in religions that you can potentially study, that separate Christianity from all other religions. All other religions outside of Christianity, the religion is based on, we're here and we have to do something. We are on a journey. We are striving but there is I've got to get to the nirvana, higher being. It is my responsibility to go and reach that pinnacle or place or God, to reach a heightened sense of enlightenment and all that. So it is man's journey to reach God.
okay.
Right? In Christianity, the sole separating factor is God said, you can't get to me.
Okay.
You cannot work. You cannot earn. You cannot. So I will come to you.
Okay.
And that is Jesus being born of a woman, God in the flesh, here on earth, walking in our shoes and doing it perfectly and saying, I am the example and there is forgiveness in me.
Okay. Well, I like I said, I'm gonna keep diving into it, because like
There's a lot out there.
it's a lot out there, and and the thing that we all have that I think people forget sometimes, along with the locker room, is like everybody's experience shapes their perception, and so like without a certain experience here and there, like, or with a certain experience here and there, that's going to change how later on down the road we perceive something. And so no, it's like I wanted to hear that story from you, or that, not story, but how you came to be in that realm, because like I figured there was something good, like to kind of switch subjects on it, and kind of maybe probably our little last thing before.
Yeah.
But speaking then of going to the military academy, and I know we're jumping all around right now, but that's kind of the point, I guess.
Yeah.
What was the decision then for why you did that?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a great story there. I wanted the chance to play D1 football.
Okay.
I had some.
That's a good story.
Smaller. I mean, I had some smaller kind of little looks and offers here and there, but going to West Point, going to Army was provided me the chance to play D1 football. And a lot of what happens there at Army specifically, or any of the military academies, the reason why people go isn't always the reason why they stay.
Uh-huh.
And so there's a transformation that takes place at any of those places, that you have guys that finish last in their class, barely scrape by the skin of their teeth, academically, militarily, physically. At Army, we call those, the last person ranked in our class, the GOAT.
Okay.
Not in the greatest of all time. It was negative sense of the GOAT, Navy, we see as the GOAT, but the GOAT is like out of 900 that I had in my class, like there was the GOAT that finished last.
Okay.
Right. The fact that he finished last at the academy has no bearing whether or not he had a successful career in the military. And a lot of times when the reason why people go isn't the same reason that they stay. So I had, football players that teammates, man, I'm here because I want to play ball.
Yeah.
Still in the Army today.
Yeah.
Colonel, right, in the Army. 23, 24 years of their life spent serving the greater good, spent, protecting the nation. But when they went there, no thought at all. I mean, there were cats that in 93, really pre-internet days, walked on campus and said they were recruited athletes, hockey players or lacrosse players, but walked on campus and said, wait a minute, this is a military academy? Like the day you're reporting.
Wow.
I didn't know that. Like, how do you do that? How do you go to the United States military? How do you go to West Point and walk on? But true story. I got classmates that I could call up right now and say, yeah, I remember walking on campus that day and saying, it's a military academy? What did I get into? And having no clue. And one of those still in the Army today.
Is there then a I mean, I'm totally uninformed when it comes to this, but is there a then requirement once you graduate? Do you need to serve a certain amount, or like what's
5 years? There's a 5-year commitment.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I was one out of 3 that didn't get a commission, that didn't get commissioned in the Army. 3 of us out of 900 for medical reasons. That didn't get commissioned. And like I said, in wartime, a few years ago, probably even now, they'd have found us a desk job, right?
Okay.
They would have done, but back then there was a lot going on in terms of downsizing the military and the officer force in general. But yeah, there's a 5-year minimum commitment when you graduate. So taxpayer expense to that education, when I went, was $250,000.
Okay.
Yeah, $250,000 education, and so the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, taxpayers, everybody said, we're going to train you these 4 years and give you a really good education. You're gonna pay it back.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So
my daughter's going in June, and she'll be 4 years from now, or 4 years from June, graduate and have a minimum of 5 years. If she's looking into going into aviation, if she did that, it would probably be closer to a 9 or 10 year commitment.
Wow.
Because of how much they invest in, flight school and those kinds of things. So.
And then you just have no choice though of like it once you graduate and it's like, hey, you're going here or there, or
yeah, there's a choice. There's a choice depending on your class rank.
Okay.
There's a choice as to the branch of the Army. So infantry, aviation, medical corps, quartermaster, field artillery. Like there's signal corps, ton of different branches and jobs you can do in the Army. And then there's a choice as to where your first duty station will be. So it could be, Fort Stewart, it could be Fort Knox, it could be, Fort Bragg, it could be in Korea, it could be, so you can list, these are my choices for my first duty station. But after that, they kind of tell you where you're going, depending on need and, career trajectory and that kind of thing.
And so then how does that compare with someone who just would join the Army or military right out of high school then?
So when you do that, you enlist. Think of privates and sergeants and corporals. Those are enlisted folks that are lower on the chain of command.
Okay.
When you either go from to a service academy or go to ROTC, you come out, you graduate as an officer, lieutenant, captain, as it climbs up. So better jobs, higher pay, and you're in a leadership role. Whereas when you go and enlist, private is the very bottom.
Okay.
And the very bottom of enlisted guys, and as you progress, you kind of move up, and there's some leadership in that, but it's leadership, more responsibility. Most second lieutenants that come out, they'll sign their name, to being responsible for millions of dollars of equipment, and when they're leading a platoon or eventually a company, Apache helicopters or A1 Abrams tanks or what have you. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like this sector is just completely unknown to me, and I just I don't understand it, obviously. And so what was I gonna say? Well, first, damn, for you to choose to do that, to play some football, that's a damn crazy schedule just to play some D1 football. I mean, what was like your normal day? Because I mean, I only like all my ideas of this stuff are like from movies of, like up at 4 a.m. bed has to be perfect. And,
Yeah. And all that's true.
Okay.
All that's true. I wouldn't say 4, probably, 5 to 5:30. We're generally up, morning formation, clean your room, then go to class, sprinkled in, a regular college class schedule would be military training, in different times. After class is over, then we're up at the field house, practice. If you didn't play a sport, then there was drill or marching practice, that kind of thing, or you just had some free time. Back in after practice, 7, 8 o'clock at night, study, shine your shoes, go to bed at midnight and get up and do it all over again. So yeah, if generally speaking, if you transfer out of one of the military academies, because of the schedule, because of the course hours and the extra leadership, modules and that kind of thing, there was normally a bump. If somebody had a 2.0 at one of the academies and transferred to Alabama or UW, they're coming in with a 3.0. They're a bump in by a full point grade average.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh.
Just because that's what goes on in the summer. There's a whole lot more opportunity than there used to be in terms of what they call individual academic development. So many internships, but the longest summer break that I had was 3 weeks.
Okay.
The rest of the summer was either being in leadership for incoming classes at the academy or spending time on regular Army posts, doing kind of an internship and learning about what it is to be a captain or a lieutenant in a regular Army unit. So I was attached for a summer to an Apache helicopter company and spent about 6 weeks with an Apache helicopter unit and in the field, for 3 weeks at a time. And I mean, you learn a lot, you get a lot of training. You go and do things that your friends and family aren't doing or never will do. I mean, throwing a live grenade, qualifying on an M16 rifle range, light night land navigation, and they give you a map and a compass, and say go find these points out in the woods. And by the way, you can't use your flashlight.
And make sure you get back.
That's right. That's right.
A question I normally close on and ask almost everybody on here is with the whole living for a living theme. Like, what would if you had to define to you what living is, how would you define that?
Yeah. What living is. I'm an Alabama guy. My real allegiance is Army football, but Alabama. I'm an Alabama guy. Nick Saban said something that stuck with me, and it's been. I read it when we were in Portugal. He's probably changed it over the years, but I know back in the 2010s, 2011 maybe, he said, "Be where your feet are." I think that for me, living involves being present. If that is spending time with my family, living is being involved in that moment and I'm guilty a lot of times of not recognizing that, and looking at my phone or being distracted because of what's going on at work, or in the market today, or that kind of thing. Just saying, okay, I want to be where my feet are. I want to be present, mentally, emotionally, as well as bodily, right?
Yeah.
And living to me is embodying that of being present with the people that I am with in the moment, and just making sure that I'm giving them 100% of me during that time, and not sacrificing the present for the future or the past. Just saying, man, this is what I'm doing. This is where I am. I respect your time, and I want to be where my feet are. That's living for me, is doing that. And I think if we do that on a daily basis, like Coach Saban would say, it doesn't matter what's on the scoreboard. Like, play every play. There's a new one coming right around the corner. If you do what you're supposed to do on that play, and the other 10 guys next to you do what they're supposed to do on that play, the scoreboard is going to figure itself out.
100%.
Right. So that's living to me.
Okay. That's
Tell me.
Yeah.
What's your definition?
Ooh, I haven't never been flipped on that really, but yeah, for me, living is like, there's a sense of freedom. It's living is kind of balance in a way of, and that is very vague, and I kind of mean it that way. But, for me, it's a sense of freedom, yet also a sense of accountability, responsibility. And those two things, doing what I want, when I want, how I want, but then also understanding that, hey, if I said something, I'm going to do something, I got to do it, and following through. And, I've throughout what I'm doing, and a thing I like talking with people and getting them on is getting people that are in a place I feel that, are kind of doing what they want and like what they're doing, and in that present moment. And like, it's so great that you literally hit them on the head a couple times, which, like, I just like pat myself on the back sometimes, I'm like, haha, yes, because like that, I'm not a big New Year's resolution guy or anything like that, but I kind of always maybe go into a year with a focus or whatever. And 2020 for me was a very much like, let's be in the now, as a I'm a bit, I can get into the horoscope kind of stuff. I'm a Virgo. I'm very analytical. I can, whether it also be just a quarterback, like whether and football coach kind of, we spend so much time of our life of either watching the film from yesterday and thinking, how can I correct that? And then also game planning for the next week of sometimes just being where your feet are, like you said, can be real difficult. And that was kind of 2020 for me. And yeah, I'm taking this question all over the place, but for 2021 now, my thing is kind of switching. I think I've been living in a mindset of scarcity, whether it be mainly from a financial way, and now moving more towards just the idea of abundance and like as you saw with the tweet of the crypto, like that was like it's really been my first kind of real thought, and it happened like that. And so like, I love when I get a moment like that it's like, hey, it's working, like just keep a little push in that direction. And so I guess I went all over but living for me is that balance of kind of maintaining everything and trying to not having to do anything, getting to do everything. And that's kind of how I see it right now. And yeah, it's been like you said, like I'm really ecstatic where I am at in the current moment, and it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows to get to this point. And some rough times that I look back and like, man, I'm glad I made it through that, but it's all been part of getting to this point. And so I'm like proud of that. And that's probably where I'm at. So thank you for asking that, because no one's ever flipped that one on me yet, and so I had to kind of put my money where my mouth is on that one. So I appreciate that. My last thing going, just to kind of give you the floor, is like, I might not have touched on anything, but you take it however you want it, whether it be just what's on your mind, any message, advice, anything. Like what would you just like, if you had to put something out there, like what do you got?
Yeah. Man, that's a big bucket. I don't know. Parting shot. I would say never stop learning. I'm pumped. I'm excited. Like, you're in that mode of, I want to find out. I want to find some answers. I love it when people are growing. One of the things I tell you, I'll say this. One of the things I've learned over the last 2 years, I was never a real goal-oriented kind of guy, like writing out your goals or a vision or what you'd like to see happen, this next year. And everybody always came and said, there's statistics that 75% or 85% of people, they write out their goals and, they reach them. The people that don't never reach them, and blah, blah. And I'm always, yeah, okay, I can reach my goals, but I never put a lot of weight on it or credence to that. The last couple of years, this last year particularly, I sat down and I was coached, and I sat down and wrote out a vision of some really big, like, goals, professionally, personally, for my family, those kinds of things. And coming to the end of the year, I didn't hit all of them, but I surprised myself in the hurdles that I did, and those goals that I did accomplish. And that's driven me more this year to say, all right, now I'm shooting for even higher goals. And so I love to see people grow professionally, personally, mature, but to be at a point where they say, I'm going to open my mind up to new thoughts, and I want to grow. Never stop learning. Never stop learning. I guess good way to sum it up.
For sure. I think that's a great way to sum it up. You know, I thought we were gonna. I wanted to touch on crypto, but I guess also in a way it's probably a good thing because I don't know enough to bring anything to the table, and so it'd be, you know, I mean, I think maybe better for everybody, but it's because, like I said, I got just lucky with this last one.
That's right.
Checking all Coinbase and got a big smile on my face. But man, no, I appreciate your time, Mike. It's been cool to reconnect. Like I said, as you've to just I meant to tell you this early, but like you early on in Portugal, because I think that was my first year I met you out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at first or so, yeah, and
Probably would have been the first, yeah.
Yeah, it was a like an inspiration in a way from the language side of things, and just like the foreigner acclimating in a foreign country, and so like that's always been on my mind. You know, I've never really told you that, but that's always something that was a motivation, inspiration kind of thing that I wanted to let you know, because
I appreciate that.
The Portuguese, I can remember like you and Duarte talking in Portuguese, and I'm like, how the fuck, what, you know, and like how long you been, and how'd you learn? And you know, like I'm at the point now where you know, that second year I took some classes, but I've been off, but I've also Skyped with my teacher throughout the years now. And so
cool.
I still, and luckily have a Brazilian girlfriend here or there has always kind of helped that keep it, you know, somewhat fresh. But anyway, now I'm rambling. The point of it was like, you kind of gave some inspiration or hope that it was possible. And so I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
And
well, let's do this again sometime. I've enjoyed it. I appreciate you having me on.
Alrighty, appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Stay safe. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Much love.
Living for a living, baby. How you doing?